If 2024 was the year of AI and 2025 was the year of migration, then I believe that 2026 is going to be the year of ownership. Today, we're going to be going through my podcast predictions for 2026, where I see the industry going and where I believe we as business owners and podcasters, content creators, can truly make a difference. Welcome to Podcasting Unlocked, the show for purpose-driven podcasters. I'm Alicia Galati, founder of Galati Media, and I'm here to share actionable strategies to help you amplify your message and grow your audience. Hey friends, welcome back. This is probably one of my favorite podcast episodes to do. I love podcasting, but this is a episode that I've been doing year over year, and it's been really interesting seeing what predictions I get right and what predictions I get wrong. Today, we're going to dive deep into what I think the future of podcasting is for 2026, some things I'm anticipating, and some ways that we can really stand out of the crowd of the emerging podcasters that are coming into this space. Sometimes it can feel like podcasting is the Wild West, but I honestly think that phase is over. We are moving into, to continue with that, analogy, we're moving into more of an industrial revolution phase where we're starting to optimize our strategies. We're building deep trust with our audience, and we are owning the podcasts that we are creating. I am excited of what we're going to see in 2026. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and look at our 2025 predictions and see if they were a hit or a miss. So the first podcast prediction of 2025 was the Great Migration, that there would be an influx of podcast creators and listeners as social media algorithms become increasingly unpredictable. I definitely believe that we saw this. I know there was some interesting aspects of business this year, just from a business owner standpoint, where a lot of people, especially in the United States, were kind of like, I don't want to spend money because I don't know what's happening with the state of the world right now. And so we saw a decrease personally in the number of people coming to us to have us launch their podcasts. But I don't think that is reflective of the industry as a whole. I think that there were still tons of new podcasts that were created during this time. Now, the number of active podcasts is still around 13%. So even though we still saw new podcasts come into the space, those that stayed on and continued with their show and continued to produce new content still stayed around the same amount. So it's interesting with that migration. I really think that it did happen, but I don't think we saw it as much as I personally anticipated. This wasn't so much just about leaving social media. I think that there's still a lot of conversations happening on social media. I think what is interesting with this particular prediction is that there's more people having both. So it's not just social media. They're not just relying on that place for their content or for engaging with their audience. They are also using these other spaces. My next prediction was that the human voice prevails. And while I think that this did happen, I also think that the idea of AI influencers really exploded on the scene this year. And so I would say this one might have been a miss, but I also think that podcast listeners really showed that they are deeply loyal to human voices and not necessarily to AI hosted podcasts because it feels disingenuous to the content that they're trying to create. I think that podcast listeners are showing that they are wanting podcasts that are hosted by humans and that they're loyal to those. It'd be interesting to see how this shifts in the new year. I do have some ideas, but I think this one was a hit for podcasts specifically. But I also think it's really interesting how much we as humans can be fooled by what is AI versus what is not. I know I'm constantly watching videos on what is AI and what's not. So it's really interesting how equipped these tools are to fool us into thinking that something is real. The next prediction was strategic guesting and out-of-the-box marketing. 100%. I think we definitely saw from 2020 to now more of an increase in in-person marketing, finding ways to speak at events, finding ways to get into your local community. And I'm really excited about that. I think that it's going to be really good to see us getting back into more in-person, even as someone with social anxiety. I still think that having those one-on-one connections, having those human to human in-person connections even are really beneficial. And of course, strategic guesting. We still saw the same number of podcasts or percentage of active podcasts. Being a guest is still the number one way to grow your show. And I think that it's so important that we continue to do that. The next was that video is optional, repurposing is essential. I actually think this one was a miss. We had some clients stay audio only, and they actually did not see nearly as much success on places like YouTube or Spotify as our clients that did video. So it's really interesting. A lot of these platforms are pushing their videos. And yes, I still do think that video is optional if you are someone who cannot create video or produce video. And so I think that it's important that we still hold to what our capacity is while still keeping in mind that yes, repurposing is really important, but what does that repurposing look like? How are we kind of maybe putting more work on ourselves than we actually need to? And I honestly think we need to get back to some basics of we create the podcast and then what are 2 to 3 places that we like to engage with our audience and focus on those places, not I need to repurpose everywhere. Let's focus more heavily. I know personally with the rise of AI and the migration and the integration that happened this year, I felt like I was doing so much more than I actually needed to with the same or less results. I'm going to say that again. I felt like I did more this year with the same or less results than previous years, with the amount of content that I was creating, with the amount of repurposing I was doing. And that is why in Q4, I left social media. I stopped talking about the podcast on social media because it got to a point where I was just doing it to do it. And I honestly did not like it. So take that how you want. But I really think that we need to get back to what is actually working and where are we actually being lit up by what we're doing. And if you're curious about my journey with why I decided to leave social in Q4, I do have an episode on that. We'll make sure we have that linked in the show notes and the YouTube description. And then my final 2025 prediction was impact-driven podcasts on the rise. I think we definitely saw that, especially with content that tends to get censored on social media. We definitely saw a rise in that. So I would say that one is a hit. All right, on to our predictions for 2026. I am really excited about these. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out. But the first is the AI human collaboration. A lot of people were saying, especially at the beginning of this year, is AI going to replace me? And I honestly think we figured out that AI is not going to replace us. Humans need creativity. We need to be able to create new things, create engaging content. And if we continue to recycle AI without creating anything new, then it will run out of new content within years. So I think that we as humans really we can use these tools. We can, especially if you consider the environmental impact of these tools, dig deep into that kind of stuff, but find a way that it's going to work for you and actually make your life easier and not add things. Like I was saying before, so often I feel this year, I really felt like I was doing more. I actually read almost 100 books less than I typically do because I was doing so much work. And because of that, I thought, hey, I'm going to get more clients. I'm going to be able to then give more work to my team. And then I'm going to have less work for me to have to do where I can focus on the business side. That did not happen at all. And so while I did more work, there were no actual results that were happening. And that is why that kind of Q4 revelation happened, where I was like, I need to do something different. Something has to shift because I am burning myself out on both ends and I cannot sustainably keep doing this. So I think that we're going to find ways for AI and humans to work together in a way that makes sense and really use these tools strategically. So here are some examples. In pre production, maybe you were considering using AI to write your script. Instead of that, find ways to use AI to be skeptical of why your episode outline is boring or why this episode idea feels like fluff, or to question your ideas. Like, use it as a collaborator rather than, hey, write this script for me. Maybe you use AI to do those invisible tasks. I know Descript that's a video editing or audio and video editing tool, and it has quite a few AI tools within it. Maybe you want to use it to remove all the filler words or to make the content more snappy and quick and bite sized. Maybe you said the guest's name wrong several times and you want to use the AI voice to fix that aspect of you saying that name. So that way the video is still there, but the audio says the correct name, right? There are all these different things that you can use it for to ensure that you're creating something that is engaging and is something that your listener is going to want to listen to. One of the things that I'm really considering as we go into this kind of AI podcast space, because I really do think we are going to see an increase in AI podcasts in 2026. I think that it's important that we show our humanity, that we show the mistakes. And so I would caution against using too much AI in the post production and find a way to maybe cut your production time by using these tools, like taking out the ums, the ers, the false starts, but still keeping it to your voice, your content, and the meaning behind what you're trying to create. My second prediction is conversion through networking. So often with podcasts, we think I need to turn my listeners into leads, which is what this podcast used to be called. And one of the reasons why I switched it was because there are so many other ways to use your podcast to be strategic. And I wanted to talk to a broader audience, the ones who are trying to make an impact, whether that looks like clients, whether that looks like engagement, whether that looks like community, whatever that looks like. So as we consider this second prediction, networking is going to be so important. And I think this goes back to that idea of having in person conversations, talking to more people about what they're doing, the shifts that they're making to broaden our horizons, to make us think about things a little differently. I honestly feel like I learned so much from my guests this last year that I was able to implement, and they made me question myself. They made me question the things that I'm doing, how I'm doing them. And in that green room space, I was able to have those deeper conversations. But not only that, I was able to network and speak in communities. I was able to do group workshops. I was able to do so many things this year that I was like, this is what's actually leading to conversions for my podcast. I'm finding that this is working really well. When I do these workshops or when I'm speaking on podcasts, then these people find my show. I'm able to direct them to it. And then they get an idea of what I'm like. I've had people come to my workshops and I'm like, I don't know if you listen to my podcast. And they're like, no, I listen to your podcast. I've been listening a lot, or here's something I got from your recent episode. And so using that type of content and those types of connections to do more work in the space to then bring people to your podcast. I honestly think that we need more community. We need more spaces where we as podcasters, business owners, content creators can speak more about the things that we do, and networking, whether that's as a podcast guest or having guests on your show, is honestly going to lead to more clients, connections, and collaborations. So let's get those conversions, clients, connections, or collaborations through our podcast that way. Number 3, vertical video as a standalone asset. We saw this a little this year, and I'm going to dig a little deeper into it because it might feel like, wait, vertical video as a standalone asset. What do you mean? What I mean is the reels, the TikToks, and the shorts. the clips that you're pulling from your podcast that are teasers, we need to shift away from that. Podcast listeners, when they're ready, will listen to your podcast. Guesting on other podcasts is a quick and easy way to say, hey, whatever podcast app you're using, go check out my podcast over here. But when people are on these platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, these platforms are doing everything in their power to keep people on their platforms because then they make money for their sponsors, which in turn means the company makes money. They're a business. They do not care about our content. They simply are like, hey, you produce content, cool, we'll push it out to people. But they don't want to push content that redirects people away from the platform. So instead of fighting the algorithm, how can we work with it? Using your podcast, grabbing those 60 to 90-second clips that make the most sense, that are standalone pieces of content. One thing that I started doing, and you'll hear it in some of the more recent and future podcast episodes, is that I started asking my guest at the end of the episode, if there's one thing that our listener takes from this conversation, what should that be? That makes a very quick and easy clip for these social media platforms. So I don't have to think about where to pull it from. My team doesn't have to think about where to pull it from. Opus Clips, which is what I use to pull clips, can easily grab that as, hey, this is really important. And it makes it its own standalone piece of content that is educational and informative so that when the person who is maybe sitting in bed, scrolling on their phone, watching these clips, when they see that, they're like, oh, that looks like an interesting conversation. I'm going to ping that up for later. Then when it is later and they have time, maybe they're going on a road trip, then your podcast is the one that they want to listen to. So meet them where they are with that short form, bite-sized content now. And if you're not someone who does video, then you can do educational carousels. Still ask your guests or come up with, here are 5 things to take away from this, or 3 things to take away from this conversation, or 3 action items you should be taking right now based on this topic. Do that and then use that as a way to educate the audience on that social platform and then move them to the podcast when they're ready for that longer form content. The 4th prediction is the rise of micro communities. This is one that I'm really excited about. I love a good micro community. And I say a good micro community because there are not a lot of good ones. I have been in the online space for almost 11 years now, I want to say. And I have been in so many communities, from podcasting communities to mom communities to business owner communities to mom business owner communities, so many different ones. There are very few that I really enjoy being in where our values align and I actually get value from those spaces. As podcasters and content creators, creating that micro community is going to be really helpful. We're starting to see a lot of the podcasters move from email because we're also seeing a decrease in the email opens. We're seeing a lot of kind of shadow banning in Gmail and things like that. And so we're seeing podcasters leave email and instead move to places like Slack, Discord, or even Substack. We're actually in the middle of migrating one of our clients from their email to Substack because Substack has such an incredible algorithm and can push more of their content in front of more people. So creating those micro communities. I'm also seeing that that is a place where we can make some money with these micro communities, where you can share your unique opinions. You can have a gated space for that top 1% of your listeners, where they are the ones that want access to you in that deeper way at an affordable cost, but still is a way that they can connect with you in a deeper level. And then that will create recurring revenue for you, which is also exciting. So that is number 4, the rise of micro communities. Number 5 is ethical podcasting as a brand imperative. This is really, really important going into this year. There is an increase in deepfakes and mass-produced AI content. We need trust. As business owners, we need trust. We need to be able to give our listeners trust. They need to be able to trust us. And if we're not open about how we're using these tools like AI, then I honestly think that we are doing our brand a disservice. I think that it's important that you explicitly state in your show notes and maybe in your intro that the voice is yours, that the content was written by a human. That if you do use AI for your research or you're using AI to write your scripts, maybe you're saying something like, hey, this episode I used AI as a way to maybe increase my time in outlining, but the voice and thoughts that I'm speaking are my own. Or if you do use your voice clone in any corrections, like I mentioned, then note it. Let people know, hey, I said this word wrong or I said the guest's name incorrectly. I used AI to correct that. And your listeners are going to trust you more. They're going to be like, oh, yes, I trust this person. I know that they're genuine. I know that it's a human behind it. And they are ethically telling me that these are the things that they're using. And so I think this will really set us apart in this synthetic world. So, with that in mind, I did use AI to outline this episode. All ideas are my own, but I like to use it to organize my thoughts. I tell AI, here are all the things I'm thinking. Here are all the ideas that I have. Here were the previous predictions and whether they were a hit or a miss. And then I ask it to create a very loose outline that I can then riff off of and speak however I want. And this is my voice. I am Alicia. I'm a human. So I am using AI in that way, but the voice spoken is mine and the content is spoken by me, but outlined by AI. And all ideas are my own. So here is your 2026 action plan. Number one, audit the land that you own. Is there a space that you have that's outside of Spotify or Instagram that you are connecting with your audience on a deeper level? Let's go ahead and look into some of those other platforms like Substack or your email list to get those up and running. Next, do you have a strategy for collaborations? Do you have a workflow for guests? Next episode that I do that is a solo, just me, not bonus episode, I'm going to be talking about how to create a converting guest workflow and system so that it's mostly automated, but also gets you results and connections. Next, create one standalone video asset, even if it's just you recording quick on your phone right after you finish an episode of one tip that your audience can take away. Give the answer in that video. Do not just leave it for, hey, go listen to the episode for the answer. No, just give them the answer and then see how that does for engagement. Go ahead and track that. And last, number 4, write your AI policy for your show, that you use AI for sound cleanup, but never for script writing. Put it on your website, put it on your show notes, or you could say that you use it for outlining, but never for script writing, or you use it to clean up the audio and nothing else. Whatever you want to use for your AI policy for your podcast. Remember, 2026 is not about doing more. We already did that in 2025, and I'm sure, like me, a lot of you felt burnt out. 2026 is going to be about doing things with intention, really figuring out what our capacity is and owning that. It's going to be about owning your audience wherever that might be, converting your listeners, your guests, your new connections into clients, collaborations, or connections, and then proving your humanity in this world that is increasingly synthetic. I'm excited about 2026. I think that we're going to see some serious growth in the podcasting space. And those of us who adhere to these things are actually going to stand out among the crowd. All right. Let me know what you thought about these 5 predictions for 2026. I'd love to know if you agree or disagree. I am always open to have conversations, especially constructive conversations where we can agree to disagree or disagree in a healthy way. And so please send me a message. You can send me an email at hello@aliciagalati.com, or you can book a free consultation at helpmypod.com. I would love to talk to you further there and get to know more about your podcast or your podcast idea and see if there's some way that I can support you, whether that's with our free products or some of our paid products. All right, until next time, happy podcasting.